What would you do if your family turned their backs on you when everything you've ever done was out of love for them? The phone rang again, the screen lighting up with an incoming call from Mom. 19 calls. 19 desperate attempts to reach me after I walked out that morning. The guilt gnawed at my chest, but so did the relief. I had left. I had walked away. It wasn't supposed to happen like this. I had always done everything I could for my family. But lately, it felt like no matter what I did, it was never enough. And the one person I tried the hardest for? My sister, Sarah. I had hoped that maybe if I helped her, supported her, she'd see that I wasn't the enemy. That I was never trying to overshadow her. I just wanted to be loved. But love in my family wasn't unconditional. It was transactional. And this morning, after yet another fight, I'd had enough. It had been building for months, maybe even years, but this time. When Sarah screamed at me that I had ruined their lives, something inside me snapped. I couldn't take it anymore. Not the accusations. Not the blame. And certainly not the way my parents always took her side. I closed my eyes for a second, feeling the weight of it all, but when I opened them, I was already in my car, driving down a road that led away from everything I had known. Away from my family. Away from the girl I used to call my sister. I left without a word, without even packing a bag. I just left. I could hear the ringing phone in my ear. 19 calls. I hadn't planned this. I didn't wake up this morning intending to break everything apart, but that's exactly what had happened. It wasn't supposed to end like this, was it? If only they had listened to me. If only they could understand that I wasn't trying to hurt anyone. All I ever wanted was to make them proud. I had spent my whole life trying to be the perfect daughter. The one who always helped when things went wrong. The one who picked up the pieces. But no matter what I did, it was never enough. And now here I was, sitting in a dingy motel room halfway across the state, staring at the phone, unsure of what to do next. The silence was deafening, and all I could think about was the fight. The fight that had led me to this place. I had never expected things to get this bad, but here I was. Alone. Again. I had always been the responsible one, the one who took care of everything, from taking care of the house when Mom and Dad were busy to dealing with the fallout of Sarah's tantrums. And yet, it was me who had been blamed. For everything. I had ruined their lives, Sarah had said. And my parents? They had stood behind her. I could feel the tears burning behind my eyes, but I fought them back. I wasn't going to cry. Not this time. Not when I had just done the hardest thing I'd ever done in my life, leave. Leave my family. It was like I had lived my entire life walking on a tightrope, trying not to fall, trying not to disappoint anyone. And every time I thought I had found my balance, something else happened. A mistake. A misstep. An accusation. Sarah's words echoed in my head, louder than any of the calls. You ruined our lives. You're the reason everything fell apart. But I wasn't the reason. I wasn't the cause of all of this. I wasn't the one who had asked for any of it. I ran my hands through my hair, the weight of the decision starting to hit me. This wasn't just about the argument or the fight. This was about years of feeling invisible. Years of being overlooked. It was about never getting the recognition I deserved for all the sacrifices I made. I had spent years bending over backward to keep the peace, to fix things, to make sure everyone else was happy. But it was always the same. Sarah got everything, and I got nothing but blame. So, when she had screamed at me this morning, accusing me of ruining their lives, our lives, something inside me cracked. I walked away. I left the house without a second thought. I didn't tell anyone. Not Mom, not Dad, and certainly not Sarah. I don't think they expected it. They didn't think I would actually leave. After all, I was the dependable one, the one who always stayed. But not anymore. I wasn't going to be anyone's doormat any longer. My fingers hovered over the screen of my phone as I stared at the 19 missed calls. The texts. The voicemails. Mom had left too, both of them asking if I was okay. But I wasn't okay. I hadn't been okay for a long time. And yet, I felt a strange sense of peace, a relief I hadn't felt in years. I tossed the phone onto the bed and let out a deep breath, staring out the window of the motel room. The view was nothing spectacular, just the endless stretch of highway and a few fast food restaurants, but it was peaceful. Quiet. No expectations. No accusations. No demands. This was freedom. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't worried about someone else's happiness. I wasn't worried about keeping the peace. I wasn't worried about whether Sarah would get upset or if my parents would blame me. It was just me. And for once, that felt okay. I could feel the weight of the world lifting off my shoulders. For years, I had lived under the constant pressure of being the perfect daughter, the perfect sister, the perfect person. But no matter how hard I tried, I could never measure up. I could never be enough. And now? Now I was free. But as the phone rang again, I couldn't help but feel a pang of guilt. 19 missed calls. 19 attempts to reach out. But what were they reaching out for? Was it for me? Or was it just for their own peace of mind? Was it because they wanted me to come back and fix things? Or was it because they couldn't stand the idea of losing the daughter who had always been there? The questions circled in my mind, but for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel the need to answer them. I had left, and now I had to figure out what came next. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough? I wasn't always the person who left. In fact, for most of my life, I had been the person who stayed. The dependable one. The one who always did the right thing, followed the rules, and put others before myself. It wasn't a role I had asked for, but somehow, it was the one that had been assigned to me. My name is Emily, and I had spent 26 years trying to live up to my family's expectations. I grew up in a suburban neighborhood with a house that looked like it belonged in a picture frame, pristine, ideal. The kind of place that looked perfect to the outside world. The kind of family that looked perfect from the outside. But behind closed doors, it was anything but. From a young age, I learned how to take care of things. I learned how to make sure everything was in order, that everyone had what they needed, and that everything was as close to perfect as possible. My mother, Jennifer, was a loving woman but incredibly meticulous. She liked everything to be just so, her house, her life, her children. I don't think she ever meant for it to be a burden, but I always felt the weight of it. She worked hard to keep up the appearances, and I worked hard to make sure everything around her stayed just right. Then there was Dad, David. He was a quiet, reserved man, always more focused on work than anything else. I never felt like I could talk to him, not like Sarah could. Sarah, my younger sister, had a way of getting him to open up, to laugh, to be present. She was charming, effortlessly so, and everyone adored her. Everyone except me, it felt like. Don't get me wrong, Sarah wasn't a bad person. But she was different from me. While I was busy making sure everything was running smoothly, she was out there being the life of the party, the one everyone flocked to. She had always been the golden child. I had always been the reliable one. And I hated it. The truth is, I don't know when it started, when I became the one who just quietly did everything, while Sarah became the one who could do no wrong. It wasn't like it happened overnight, but over time, I realized that I had fallen into this role. Sarah was always the center of attention, always the one who had everyone's eyes on her. I remember how, growing up, she would get all the praise for the simplest of things, how she aced a math test or won a tennis match. Meanwhile, when I'd done something amazing like earning an A+ in a difficult class or landing a job at the local bakery to help pay for things, my accomplishments felt like footnotes. I had always been the one who fixed things. When Mom's back went out one summer, it was me who stepped in to handle the house, the cooking, and taking care of Sarah, who was only 12 at the time. When Dad's business started having trouble a few years later, I was the one who helped pick up the slack, even though I was barely out of high school. But it was always expected. Nobody ever thanked me for it, and I never asked for praise. I just did it. I didn't mind being the one to take on the weight, as long as the rest of the family was okay. But deep down, it started to eat away at me. I was tired of being the responsible one. Tired of being the one who put others' needs before my own. Tired of not being seen. Then Sarah turned 16. Everything changed when she got her driver's license. It was as if the family's attention shifted in an instant. Suddenly, Sarah was the one who needed everything. The world revolved around her. Mom started giving her extra attention, hovering over her every need. Dad started taking her out for little father-daughter dates, something that had never happened with me. I guess I should have been happy for Sarah. She was the baby of the family, and it made sense that she would get more attention. But the reality was, it hurt. It hurt in a way I couldn't fully express. I tried to talk to Mom about it. I tried to get her to see how I was feeling. But whenever I did, I was met with a gentle, "You're the older one, Em. You've always been mature. Sarah needs this right now." It didn't make sense to me. Why was it that I had to be the one to be mature all the time? Why couldn't I just be the one who needed attention, too? Why did everything always have to fall on me? The truth was, Sarah didn't mean to push me aside. She wasn't trying to hurt me. But she was always just there. She was effortlessly charming, the kind of person everyone adored without even trying. And she was always the one who needed saving. Always the one who got the sympathy. Always the one who needed everyone to rally behind her. And me? Well, I just kept doing what I always did, what needed to be done. But over time, that feeling of invisibility grew. I started to resent it. I resented the way Sarah would always get the benefit of the doubt, the way Mom and Dad would constantly back her up, even when she made mistakes. I started to feel like a stranger in my own family, like an afterthought. And it wasn't like I could tell anyone how I felt. Because every time I tried, I was told I was being dramatic. I was told to get over it. The truth is, I didn't get over it. I just kept quiet. But when Sarah came home from college one weekend and screamed at me that I had ruined our family's happiness, that I was the one who caused all their problems, I couldn't stay quiet anymore. I couldn't pretend that everything was fine. I couldn't pretend that I didn't care. I was done being the invisible one. I was done being the one who was always expected to fix everything without ever getting a thank you, let alone an ounce of understanding. And I was done living in a family that thought the only thing that mattered was keeping up appearances. I had always been the one to hold everything together, to keep things from falling apart. But when Sarah's words hit me, something inside me broke. I couldn't do it anymore. So I left. I didn't even pack a bag. I didn't take anything with me. I just left. The phone kept ringing. 19 missed calls. But for the first time in years, I didn't feel guilty. I was free. The days following my decision to leave were both a whirlwind and an eerie silence. The chaos that had been building for years, like a storm brewing just on the horizon, was suddenly here. But the hardest part wasn't leaving, it was facing what I had left behind. It wasn't that I didn't love my family. Of course, I loved them. I loved my parents, and despite everything, I loved Sarah. But somewhere along the way, I had stopped feeling like a part of it. I had become the person everyone leaned on, the one who took on the responsibility without question, even when it hurt. And when I left, I finally realized just how much I had been holding everything together, even if no one had ever acknowledged it. The first night I spent in the motel was uncomfortable. It wasn't the kind of place I would have ever stayed under normal circumstances. The walls were thin, and the bed was cheap. There was a sense of loneliness that hung in the air like a cloud, suffocating and heavy. I didn't know what I was supposed to do now. Where would I go? What would I do next? The phone calls kept coming, ringing incessantly. At first, I had ignored them. It was easier that way. But then, as the day wore on and the loneliness crept in, I began to wonder, why weren't they coming to find me? Why weren't my parents calling, pleading with me to come home? Why was it just Sarah over and over again? I had always been the one to make the first move, the one who reached out when things went wrong. But this time, I didn't want to be the one who fixed everything. I wanted to feel what it was like to be left alone, to not be the one everyone turned to. And so, I let the phone ring. But Sarah's messages, they cut deeper. Emily, please come back. Mom and Dad don't know what to do without you. They're lost without you. I'm lost without you. Each message was filled with desperation, guilt, and, to be honest, a little manipulation. But the thing that hurt the most was the underlying accusation that somehow I had abandoned them. That it was my fault that everything had fallen apart. I had never wanted to be the center of attention. I never asked for praise or recognition. But this was different. Sarah's words made me feel like I was the villain in my own story. By the third day, the tension started to build, the familiar weight of my family's expectations creeping back into my mind. I couldn't run forever, could I? I had left, yes, but part of me felt like I was abandoning them in their time of need. How could I do that to them? That's when I decided to check in on Mom and Dad. I dialed the number, my hands shaking, unsure of what to expect. Would they be angry? Would they beg me to come home? Or would they side with Sarah, the golden child, as they always did? Mom answered. Her voice was softer than I expected, as if she had been crying. Emily, she said, the word hanging in the air like a question. Where are you? We're worried. I took a deep breath, trying to steady my nerves. I'm fine, Mom. I needed some space. Some time away. I don't understand, she replied, her voice thick with emotion. You've always been there for us. For Sarah. Why would you leave? Why would you walk away like this? The words stung. I hadn't expected to hear them. Of course, she wouldn't understand. I had always been the one who fixed things, the one who kept everything running smoothly, even when I was falling apart inside. And now, when I finally broke, they didn't know how to react. They didn't know how to handle it. I don't know, Mom, I said quietly, trying to hold back the tears. I just couldn't do it anymore. I couldn't keep pretending everything was okay when it wasn't. She was silent on the other end of the line, the tension thick and heavy. Finally, she spoke again, but her voice sounded distant, almost as if she was speaking through a fog. You need to come back, Emily. We need you here. Sarah needs you. We're falling apart without you. That was it. The thing that had always been there, unspoken, but now it was clear as day. It was always about what they needed from me, what I could give them. Never once had I been allowed to express my own needs. Never once had anyone asked what I wanted or how I felt. I'm not coming back, Mom, I said, my voice firm, despite the tremor in it. I need time. I need to figure things out. I don't know what to say to you anymore, she whispered. Please just think about it. You don't have to leave forever. And, just like that, the conversation ended. The weight of it hung heavy on my shoulders as I sat there in the motel room, staring at the blank walls. I could feel the pressure mounting, the expectations creeping back in. They needed me. Sarah needed me. But what about me? Who was there to take care of me? Who would pick up the pieces for me? The phone rang again, but I didn't answer it. I couldn't. If I answered, I would only fall back into the same pattern, fixing things, making everything okay again. I wasn't ready to go back to that. That's when I realized the true extent of my conflict. It wasn't just about leaving. It wasn't just about Sarah's accusations or Mom's pleading. It was about me finally standing up for myself. About me recognizing that I had been living for everyone else for so long, I had forgotten how to live for myself. I couldn't go back. Not yet. But as I sat there, alone in that tiny motel room, I couldn't shake the feeling that no matter what I did, no matter where I went, I was never going to be free of this family. The ties that bound us were too strong, and no matter how far I ran, they would always be there, waiting. And so, the conflict grew. The tension between what I wanted and what my family needed would only continue to rise. Could I break free? Could I finally let go of the past and live for myself? Or would I go back, like I always did, and take on the burden once more? The answers were still unclear, but one thing was certain: I was at a crossroads. And whichever path I chose would change everything. The storm inside me was just beginning. The following days became a blur of endless thinking, my mind constantly oscillating between guilt and the bitter taste of freedom. I couldn't tell which side was winning. Part of me was relieved to be away from the suffocating expectations of home, yet another part of me longed to make everything right again. But no matter how much I wrestled with my feelings, I knew I couldn't go back. Not yet, not until I figured out who I was without them. And that meant facing something that terrified me, starting fresh. The hardest part was not the physical distance, but the emotional one. The family dynamics I had spent years adjusting to, always being the caretaker, always the fixer, had become so ingrained in me that even in the motel room, sitting in the silence of my own company, I could almost hear their voices calling out to me, "Come back. We need you." But who was I, really, without them? I had spent my life as Emily, the responsible daughter, the one who kept the world from falling apart. So, when I turned off my phone for the first time and left it in the drawer, buried under a few change of clothes, I wasn't sure what would happen. Was I still Emily? Or had I been swallowed whole by this family I couldn't escape? That night, I took a walk. The city was a mix of neon lights and bustling activity, but it felt oddly soothing compared to the oppressive quiet that filled the motel room. As I walked, my mind wandered. I passed a coffee shop and paused, the smell of fresh coffee calling to me. It was a small moment of comfort, something so simple yet rare in the life I had been living. I walked in and ordered a black coffee, nothing special. As I waited for my drink, I overheard a conversation between two people sitting at the corner table. They were laughing, talking about their plans for the weekend, joking about life. It struck me how different their world was from mine, how easy and light-hearted their conversations were compared to the weight of my own life. As I sipped my coffee, I felt a strange sense of both awe and envy. These people didn't have a family who depended on them constantly. They weren't holding everything together with strings and fraying edges, like I had been for so long. I couldn't help but wonder, what if I didn't have to hold things together anymore? What if I could just let go? The thought felt both liberating and terrifying at once. Could I really let go of everything that had defined me for so long? Was it even possible to break free? I spent hours wandering the streets that night, each step pulling me further away from the life I had known. My thoughts were heavy, but for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was in control. I didn't have anyone telling me what to do or how to be. It was exhilarating. Eventually, I found myself at a park. It was quiet, the kind of place where people went to escape the noise of the world. I sat on a bench and let the stillness wash over me. The park was empty, save for a few joggers and a couple of elderly people walking their dogs. For once, it was just me. And in that moment, I felt a peace I hadn't known in years. But peace was fleeting, and the noise of my phone ringing again shattered the calm. It was Sarah. I hesitated for a moment. I hadn't spoken to her since the day I left. I knew what she would say. I knew the guilt she would try to instill in me. But this time, I wasn't ready to talk. Not yet. But after a few moments of internal struggle, I answered. "Emily, please." Sarah's voice was strained, thick with emotion. "Mom and Dad are falling apart. I don't know what to do anymore. I've tried to keep it together, but it's just not the same without you. Please, you have to come back." I could feel her desperation, her words laced with that familiar mixture of guilt and pleading. But it wasn't the words that got to me. It was the silence afterward. The heavy, unspoken truth that we both knew but never dared say out loud. "You always did everything for us, Emily," Sarah continued, her voice breaking. "But I don't want to lose you too. You mean everything to me." It was like a punch to the gut. I wanted to feel something, anything, other than the growing sense of suffocation. But instead, all I felt was the ache of being trapped in a cycle I couldn't break. I had always been there for them. I had always put their needs above my own. But what about me? "I can't, Sarah," I said quietly, my voice thick with emotion. I can't go back to that. Not yet. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. I could almost hear her trying to process what I was saying, trying to hold on to the version of me she knew, the reliable, ever-present Emily who never let anyone down. But I wasn't that person anymore. "I'm sorry," I whispered before hanging up the phone. The phone slipped from my hands, and I sat there in the park, feeling both broken and relieved. I knew my words had hurt her, but I also knew that they were the truth. I couldn't go back to being the person I had been. I couldn't go back to a life of self-sacrifice and endless responsibility. I had to figure out who I was without them. As I sat there in the quiet of the night, I knew that I was at a turning point. This wasn't just about my family anymore. It was about me, about finding out who I really was, independent of everyone else. And that meant taking a leap into the unknown. I had no plan, no idea what I was going to do next. But I knew one thing. I couldn't stay in the same place, holding on to the past. It was time to let go. Time to take the first step into my new life. The journey ahead was uncertain, filled with obstacles and challenges I couldn't even imagine. But for the first time in a long time, I wasn't afraid. I was ready. And that's when I realized it wasn't just my family who had to learn how to live without me. It was me who had to learn how to live without them. And that journey, the one that lay ahead, would be the hardest, but also the most freeing one of all. I was finally ready to walk away from the person I had been, ready to see who I could become. The climb would be steep, but it was the only way forward. The next few days were a blur of uncertainty, but there was something freeing about it. For the first time in years, I wasn't bound by anyone else's expectations. I wasn't the responsible daughter, the one who fixed everything. I was just Emily, a name, a person, standing at the edge of something new, unsure of where the path would lead. It was strange, really. The world felt both wide open and incredibly small. I'd spent so much of my life living for others that I had no idea what I wanted, what I needed, or even who I was beyond the role I'd played for so long. I hadn't given myself permission to figure it out. But now, without the daily pressure of family, it was like I could finally breathe again. That didn't mean the guilt was gone. No, it still hung over me, a persistent shadow that I couldn't shake. But as the days passed, I found myself less haunted by it. I was beginning to understand that the guilt wasn't just because I'd left. It was because, for the first time, I was allowing myself to prioritize my own well-being over everyone else's. But then, something happened that shook me to my core. It was a text message. "We need to talk. It's about Sarah. Please come home." It was from Dad. It was short, to the point. But the simplicity of it, combined with the urgency in the words, sucked the air out of my lungs. I stared at the message, my finger hovering over the screen, unsure of what to do. What was this about? What had happened to Sarah? For a moment, I tried to ignore the surge of panic rising in my chest. I couldn't go back, not yet. I wasn't ready to be pulled back into the suffocating life I'd just walked away from. But the thought of Sarah, I couldn't ignore it. She was my sister, and despite everything, I couldn't just pretend I didn't care. So I called him back. "Dad?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "Emily," he said, his voice strained. She's not okay. She's been having a rough time since you left. I don't know what to do anymore. She's blaming herself for everything. For you leaving. For everything falling apart." His words hit me like a ton of bricks. I knew Sarah had been struggling, but hearing it like this, it felt like a punch to the gut. "Dad, what's going on with her?" I asked, suddenly feeling a wave of guilt flood my chest. "She's isolating herself. She won't talk to us. She keeps saying it's her fault that you left, that if she had been a better sister, you wouldn't have left. I don't know how to get through to her, Emily. She needs you." The weight of those words crushed me. My sister, my sweet, stubborn sister, was blaming herself for everything. And here I was, living my life, trying to heal from the chaos we'd been living in for so long. Was this my fault? Was I the one who had abandoned her? I tried to hold back tears, but they came anyway. It was too much. Too much to carry, too much to bear. Dad, I don't know what to do, I whispered. I can't go back to the way things were. I can't keep being the one who fixes everything. I'm broken too. I need time. I understand, Emily, he said softly. But she's your sister. And we're all falling apart. Please come home. Please talk to her. She needs you. We all do. The silence that followed felt deafening. My dad, the one who had always been the strong one, was pleading with me, his voice breaking with emotion. The pain in his voice echoed in my mind, mixing with the guilt that had been building since the day I left. And yet, I knew something deep inside of me. I couldn't go back. I couldn't fix this. Not by myself. I had spent too many years trying to fix things, trying to hold everything together, while my own needs and feelings were pushed aside. And now, as I sat in that tiny motel room, hearing my dad's desperate pleas, I realized that I had to break free. For myself. Not just for Sarah or for Mom and Dad. I can't, Dad, I finally said, my voice trembling. I'm not ready. I need more time. Please understand. There was a long pause before he spoke again, his voice barely above a whisper. I understand, Emily. But please don't let this tear us apart. Don't let it tear you apart. The call ended, and I sat there, my heart racing, the weight of the conversation settling heavily on my chest. The storm inside me that I had been trying to outrun for days had finally caught up to me. There was no more avoiding it. The truth was, I couldn't fix everything. Not for them, and not for myself. There was no perfect solution, no way to make it all right again. And as much as I wanted to, I couldn't go back to the person I had been. I needed to heal. I needed to find myself again before I could help anyone else. But that didn't mean it didn't hurt. I could feel the ache deep in my chest, the kind of pain that only comes from love and loss intertwined. It wasn't just the loss of my family, though that was part of it. It was the loss of the version of myself that I had always been, Emily, the fixer, the caregiver, the one who held everyone else together while sacrificing myself in the process. But in that moment, I knew I couldn't go back to that. And as much as it hurt to admit it, I couldn't save Sarah this time. I couldn't save my family. Not until I saved myself first. I wiped away my tears, took a deep breath, and stood up. I wasn't sure where I was going from here or what the future would hold. But for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was finally doing something for me. And that was the first step toward healing. The journey ahead wasn't going to be easy. But I was ready to face it no matter how painful it might be, because I knew deep down that it was the only way forward. And sometimes, the hardest journey is the one we have to take alone. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough? The days after my conversation with Dad were heavy. Each morning I woke up in that tiny motel room. The reality of the situation hit me harder than I had expected. The weight of everything, my family, the guilt, the confusion about what to do next, pressed on me relentlessly. But amidst all the noise in my head, there was one thing I began to realize. I had been living for everyone else for so long, and now it was time to learn how to live for myself. I didn't have all the answers, and I wasn't sure how I was supposed to move forward, but I knew I had to start somewhere. For the first time in years, I wasn't looking after anyone. I wasn't making sure everyone else was okay. And that felt terrifying and liberating all at once. I spent my days walking the city, trying to clear my mind. I didn't have a plan. I didn't know where I was going or what I was doing. I just knew that I needed space. And with each step, I was starting to feel more like myself, whoever that was. I had always been the glue that held everything together. It was my job, in a sense. But I realized that over time, I had lost pieces of myself in the process. I had become so wrapped up in their problems, their struggles, and their expectations that I had neglected my own needs, my own dreams. I was not just Emily, the daughter, the sister, the one who fixed everything. I was Emily, the woman who had her own hopes, fears, and desires. And it was time to get reacquainted with her. One morning, I decided to leave the city behind for a while. I packed up my things and drove out to a small cabin in the woods, a place I had rented months before but had never used. It was quiet there, isolated, and for the first time in a long time, I felt safe. Alone, but safe. The first few days were the hardest. The silence was almost unbearable. I didn't have anyone to talk to, and the only sound was the wind rustling through the trees. I spent hours just thinking, letting my mind wander. I thought about my family, about Mom, about Dad, about Sarah, and I realized something crucial. They were all part of my life. But they were not my life. That was a difficult pill to swallow. I had been so wrapped up in trying to keep them all happy, to keep everything from falling apart, that I had forgotten to live for myself. I had neglected the most important person in my life, me. But as the days went on, something began to shift inside me. I started to see my situation differently. Yes, I had hurt my family by leaving. Yes, there was pain. But there was also growth. I was learning how to stand on my own 2 feet, how to make decisions that weren't influenced by others' needs or expectations. And most importantly, I was learning that I didn't have to carry the weight of the world on my shoulders. I wasn't perfect, and I wasn't going to fix everything. But I didn't have to. No one could. There was a moment one evening when I was sitting by the fire, the warmth of the flames flickering in front of me. I thought about all the years I had spent trying to be everything to everyone. I thought about the pressure I had put on myself and the toll it had taken on me, emotionally and mentally. But as the fire crackled, I felt something inside me start to change. I realized that I didn't need to be perfect. I didn't need to carry the burdens of others. And for the first time in a long time, I felt at peace with that. I didn't need to rush back into my family's arms, nor did I need to fix everything for them. I needed to give myself the time and space to heal, to figure out who I was outside of those roles I had played for so long. And that was okay. It was okay to take a step back. It was okay to not have all the answers. I could take my time. I could figure things out slowly, piece by piece. For the first time in a long time, I felt the weight of the world lift from my shoulders. I spent the next week at the cabin, learning how to live in silence, how to enjoy my own company, and how to listen to my own thoughts without feeling the pressure of needing to be everything to everyone. But even in the peace, my family still lingered in my mind. It wasn't that I had forgotten them or stopped caring. It was that I had finally learned how to care for myself, too. One morning, after a long walk through the woods, I sat down at the cabin's small table, staring out the window at the misty mountains in the distance. My phone buzzed. It was a message from Sarah. "Emily, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to blame you. I was just so scared. Please come home. I miss you." I read the message 3 times, letting the words sink in. It was everything I had hoped to hear, and yet I wasn't sure what to do with it. I took a deep breath and typed my response slowly. "I miss you too, Sarah. But I need more time. I'm not ready to come back yet. Please understand." I hit send, and then I sat there for a long time, feeling the weight of my decision. It wasn't easy, but I knew it was the right one for me. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like I had made the right choice. It wasn't about abandoning my family. It was about taking care of myself first, something I had never done before. The truth was, my family would always be a part of me. But I couldn't be the person they wanted me to be if I didn't know who I was anymore. I wasn't going to let my past define me, nor was I going to let guilt control my life. I was going to move forward, even if that meant taking things one step at a time. As the days went by, I found myself growing stronger, more confident. I was learning how to be Emily again, without the weight of everyone else's expectations. I didn't have all the answers yet, but I was on the right path. I was finally learning how to live for myself. And that, I realized, was the most important lesson of all. A few weeks had passed since my time at the cabin, and life, though still uncertain, was beginning to take shape in a way I hadn't anticipated. There was a strange comfort in the silence, in the stillness that now filled my life. I found myself waking up each day with no agenda other than to figure out who I was and what I truly wanted. I took up painting again, something I had loved but put aside for years. The colors felt like a release, like I could finally express myself without words. But no matter how much I tried to lose myself in the quiet, there was always the undercurrent of my family's expectations. It lingered quietly in the background. I knew that eventually I would have to confront them again. But I wasn't sure when or how. And then, one day, out of nowhere, I received a call from Sarah. The tone of her voice immediately sent a shock through me, pulling me out of the peaceful bubble I had so carefully created. "Emily, I need you to come back. Please." Her words were like a jolt to the system. I hadn't expected it, but then again, I had always known this moment would come. Sarah had been through so much since I left. I could hear it in her voice, desperation, fear, and, beneath it all, love. I could feel the old pull, the instinct to be there for her, to fix everything for her. It was what I had always done. But this time, it felt different. "I can't just come back, Sarah," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I need time." "I told you that." "I know, but it's not just about you. It's about us. The family's falling apart without you here. I can't handle this alone. You were always the one who knew how to fix things. I don't know what to do anymore." I could hear her choke back tears, and it broke my heart. But it also made something in me stir. I had always been the one to carry the weight, always the one to step in and make it better. But this time, I wasn't sure I could. "I don't know what to say, Sarah. I'm still figuring things out. I can't just go back to how things were." I paused, the words hanging in the air. "You have to understand, I'm not the same person I was when I left. I'm different. I'm still learning to be different. And I need to stay away a little longer." There was a long silence before Sarah spoke again, her voice quieter, but still full of emotion. "I just don't want to lose you, Emily. Please, don't leave me like this." It felt like a slap in the face, the desperation in her tone cutting through all the progress I had made. She needed me. She always needed me. And no matter how much I told myself I couldn't go back to that role, the truth was, part of me wanted to. I wanted to be there for her. But I had to stay strong. For both of us. "I'm not leaving you, Sarah," I said, my voice breaking slightly. "But I can't fix this right now. I need time. I promise I'll be there when I'm ready. But you need to figure some of this out on your own, too." And then, after a long pause, I added softly, "I love you, Sarah. Always." "I love you too," she whispered, and the call ended. I sat there, staring at my phone, feeling a wave of conflicting emotions crash over me. Guilt, love, fear, hope. For the first time in months, I felt completely torn. I knew I couldn't go back. Not yet. But the pull to return to my family, to the people I loved, was undeniable. I wasn't ready to face the chaos again. But I also wasn't ready to let go of them entirely. I spent the next few days in a state of limbo. Every time I tried to quiet my mind, to go back to focusing on myself, Sarah's voice echoed in my head. The pressure to fix everything was suffocating. I realized that no matter how far I tried to distance myself, I couldn't fully escape. They were always going to be part of me. But the question still lingered. Could I be the person they needed and still be true to myself? I didn't have an answer. But then, something unexpected happened that forced me to confront everything I had been avoiding. One evening, as I was walking along a quiet trail near the cabin, I ran into someone I hadn't seen in years. It was Josh. The last time I had seen him was before I left, when everything was falling apart. Josh had been my best friend through high school and a part of my life for as long as I could remember. But when I had started dating Sean, things had changed. The relationship between Josh and me had become strained, and eventually, we stopped talking altogether. Seeing him standing there, looking just as I remembered, was like a moment frozen in time. "Emily," he said, his voice a mix of surprise and something else, something I couldn't quite place. "It's been a long time." I nodded, unsure of what to say. I hadn't expected to see him here, let alone have a conversation with him about everything that had happened. "Yeah, it has," I replied. "I didn't expect to run into you out here." "I was in the area. Thought I'd go for a hike," Josh said, glancing around. "Have you been?" His question felt loaded. How had I been? I didn't even know how to answer that. I had been lost. I had been trying to figure out who I was outside of the roles I had played for so long. "Honestly, it's been rough," I said after a long pause. "I'm still figuring things out." Josh's gaze softened, and he took a step closer. "I heard about what happened with your family. I know things got bad. But Emily, I just want you to know that it's okay to need time. You don't have to be everything for everyone. Not anymore." His words hit me like a wave, knocking me off balance. "I don't know what I'm supposed to do," I admitted, the vulnerability in my voice surprising even myself. "I'm torn between wanting to go back and fix things, but also knowing that I need to stay away to figure out who I really am." Josh nodded slowly, as if he understood. He had always understood me in ways that others hadn't. "You don't have to figure it out all at once," he said quietly. "You just have to take it one step at a time. And if you ever need someone to talk to, I'm here." "I always will be." I stared at him, taken aback by his words. The comfort of his presence, after all these years, was more than I could handle in that moment. "Thanks, Josh," I said softly, feeling the weight of everything I had been carrying for so long. And for the first time in a long time, I allowed myself to just breathe. Maybe I didn't have to do this alone after all. The days following my conversation with Josh felt surreal. His words had stayed with me, echoing in my mind long after we parted ways. I wasn't used to being this vulnerable, especially not in front of someone who knew me so well. But there was something about the way he spoke, with the kind of understanding that only someone who had known me for years could have, that made me feel less alone. I spent the next few days reflecting on everything, my family, my choices, and what it really meant to be true to myself. I couldn't keep running away from the people who mattered to me, but I also couldn't continue putting them before myself. There had to be a balance. I had to figure out how to stand up for myself while still showing up for them. But as much as I tried to find peace with my decisions, there was still a nagging feeling inside me. The guilt that had been my constant companion for so long hadn't gone away. I knew that Sarah was struggling, and even though I wasn't ready to go back yet, I couldn't ignore the fact that she needed me. I had to go home. I don't know what changed in me that day. Maybe it was the conversation with Josh, or maybe it was the stillness of the cabin that had given me too much time to think. But when I finally packed my things and left the woods behind, it felt like I was stepping into a new chapter of my life. The uncertainty was still there, but for the first time, I wasn't afraid to face it. I drove back home, not knowing what to expect when I arrived. My mind was a whirl of thoughts, none of them particularly clear. All I knew was that I couldn't continue hiding. I couldn't keep putting my family at arm's length just because I was afraid of falling back into old patterns. When I pulled up to the house, everything looked the same. The familiar sight of the front porch, the garden Dad always tended to, the small details that reminded me of how much love had been poured into this place over the years, it all felt so overwhelming. The house that had once been my sanctuary now seemed to hold so much tension, so much history I wasn't sure I was ready to face again. But I had to. I rang the doorbell, my hand shaking more than I cared to admit. After a moment, the door opened, and there stood Sarah, her face lit up with a mix of surprise, hope, and something else, something I couldn't quite place. "Emily?" Her voice trembled slightly, like she wasn't sure if she was imagining this, or if I was really standing there. "Yeah," I said, forcing a small smile. "I'm back." For a moment, we just stood there, staring at each other. The air between us felt thick with unspoken words, things that had been left unsaid for so long. Finally, Sarah stepped forward and threw her arms around me, pulling me into a tight hug. "I'm so sorry," she whispered, her voice breaking. "I never meant to push you away. I was scared, Emily. I was so scared of losing you." The weight of her words hit me like a tidal wave. I hugged her back, not knowing what to say. All I could do was hold her and let the moment wash over me. "I know," I whispered back. "I know. But I'm here now." She pulled away just slightly, looking up at me with tear-streaked eyes. "I didn't know what to do without you. You've always been the one who fixed everything. I didn't know how to keep going without you." I looked at her, seeing the desperation in her eyes, and it made my heart ache. I could feel that familiar pull to fix things, to make everything better again. But this time, I didn't know if I could. I had spent so long carrying everyone else's burdens that I wasn't sure I had anything left to give. "Sarah," I said slowly, my voice trembling slightly. "I can't fix everything. I can't be the one who takes care of everything anymore." Her face fell, and I could see the pain in her eyes. I hated that I was causing her more pain, but I knew that I couldn't keep doing this. "I need to take care of me, too," I continued. "I've spent so long looking after everyone else that I forgot how to take care of myself. But I'm trying to change that." Sarah didn't say anything for a moment. She just stood there, her arms crossed over her chest, her face torn between sadness and understanding. Finally, she nodded, her eyes filled with tears. "I don't want to lose you, Em. I really don't. But I understand. I do." I sighed, relief flooding me in that moment. I wasn't sure how long it would take for us to get back to where we once were, or if we would ever truly be the same. But just hearing her say that she understood meant more to me than I could express. "I'm not going anywhere," I said softly. "I just need some time. And you do too. We both need to heal." She gave me a small smile, and for the first time in a long time, I felt a glimmer of hope. Maybe, just maybe, we could both figure this out. Maybe we didn't have to carry the weight of everything alone. We spent the rest of the day talking, not about the past or all the mistakes we had made, but about where we wanted to go from here. We didn't have all the answers, and we still had a lot of healing to do. But for the first time, I felt like I was on the right path. Later that evening, after Sarah had gone to bed, I found myself sitting on the porch, staring out at the familiar view of the backyard. It felt so strange to be back here, after everything that had happened. I still didn't know what the future held, but for the first time in a long time, I felt like I had a chance at starting over. Not just with my family, but with myself. I wasn't the person I had been when I left, and I wasn't sure what the future would look like. But I knew one thing for sure: I was no longer running away. The next morning, I woke up with a sense of quiet resolve. I didn't have all the answers yet, but I was learning how to face my past and look forward to the future. It was going to take time, and it wouldn't be easy, but I was finally ready to do the work. Not just for my family, but for me. And that, I realized, was the most important part of all. The days that followed my return were both a relief and a struggle. Life at home felt different, quieter, but not in the peaceful way I had experienced at the cabin. It was quieter in the sense that everything was held back, as if we were all waiting for the next storm to hit, or for someone to finally break the silence that had lingered for too long. Sarah and I began to rebuild what we had lost, piece by piece. It wasn't easy. Our conversations were often awkward, and there was a palpable tension between us that hadn't been there before. I could see it in the way she looked at me, like she was waiting for me to slip back into the role of the fixer, the one who had always held everything together. But I couldn't do that anymore. I had made that clear, but still, the pressure to be everything for everyone lingered. Every now and then, I would find myself sitting in the living room, staring at the photographs on the walls. Family vacations, birthday parties, moments frozen in time. Moments before the chaos, before everything had unraveled. And as I looked at those pictures, I couldn't help but wonder how we had gotten here. How had everything gone so wrong? I couldn't answer that question yet, but I knew I needed to find a way to heal. One afternoon, as I was making tea in the kitchen, the sound of the doorbell startled me. I wasn't expecting anyone, and for a brief moment, I felt a flutter of anxiety. Was it Sarah's friends? My parents? Or someone else trying to push me into making a decision I wasn't ready for? I opened the door to find a face I hadn't seen in years. Mom. She was standing there, looking somewhat hesitant, but still as familiar as ever. Her hair was a little grayer now, the lines on her face a little deeper, but she still had that same warmth in her eyes. She had always been the peacemaker, the one who tried to keep everything calm, even when the rest of us were at odds. But standing there, I could see the hurt in her expression. It was the same hurt I had seen in Sarah's eyes just a few days ago. Mom, I said, my voice a little shaky. I hadn't expected her to come by, not after everything had happened. What are you doing here? I just wanted to talk, she said, her voice soft. Can I come in? I hesitated for a moment before stepping aside to let her in. The moment she crossed the threshold, I felt a wave of nostalgia and unease wash over me. The house felt so much smaller with the weight of everything unsaid between us. We sat at the kitchen table, the air thick with silence. I could feel the years of unresolved tension between us. She wasn't the type to confront things head-on, and neither was I. But today, something was different. I've been thinking a lot about you, she said, finally breaking the silence. About everything that happened, and about how we've handled things. I know it wasn't easy for you, Emily. You've always been the one to take care of everything, to fix everything, and I think we all relied on you too much. I couldn't hide my surprise. This wasn't the mom I remembered. The mom I knew would have never admitted something like that. She was always the one who kept up appearances, always the one who made it seem like everything was fine, even when it wasn't. I didn't know how much pressure we were putting on you, she continued, her voice shaking a little. And when you left, I don't think I really understood what we had lost until now. I've been so focused on keeping things together, I never stopped to ask how you were doing. I swallowed, the lump in my throat making it hard to speak. I had waited years for her to say something like this, but hearing it now, it didn't feel like the relief I thought it would. Instead, it felt like a mix of sadness and regret. Mom, I said softly, it's not just about the pressure. It's about the fact that no one ever really asked me what I needed. You were always so focused on keeping up appearances that I never had the chance to speak up. And when I did, it felt like no one was listening. Her eyes filled with tears, and for a moment, I could see the hurt in her face. The same hurt I had carried for so long. I realized then that we had both been running from the same thing, our inability to really see each other, to understand each other. I'm sorry, Emily, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I'm sorry for not seeing you, for not being there when you needed me. It was the apology I had been waiting for, but it didn't feel like a clean slate. It didn't erase the years of miscommunication, of misunderstandings, of me feeling like I had to carry the weight of the world on my shoulders. But as I looked at her, I realized something important. This moment, right here, was a step toward healing. I took a deep breath, wiping the tear that had escaped my eye. I don't know if things can ever go back to the way they were, Mom, I said quietly. But I do know that we can try to move forward. I need time. We all do. She nodded, her eyes still wet with emotion. I understand, and I'll give you the time you need. Just know that I love you, and I'm here whenever you're ready. The words were simple, but they carried weight. The truth was, I wasn't sure when or if I would be ready to fully forgive, to completely heal. But in that moment, I understood that healing wasn't about forgetting or pretending everything was fine. It was about acknowledging the pain and working through it, step by step. After Mom left, I found myself sitting in the kitchen for a long time, staring at the empty chair where she had been. The conversation had been difficult, but it had been necessary. And for the first time in a long while, I felt like a part of me was beginning to heal. But the road ahead wasn't going to be easy. The next step would be the hardest yet, the final confrontation with my father. I had spent so much of my life avoiding the truth, avoiding the anger I had buried deep inside. But I knew that the only way to move forward was to face it head-on. I wasn't sure if I was ready, but I knew I couldn't wait any longer. The weight of unspoken words had lingered for too long. It was time to speak the truth, no matter how much it hurt. The sun was setting, casting a warm golden hue across the backyard. The shadows grew longer, and with them, so did the weight of my thoughts. I had been through so much in the past few days, and yet there was one thing left unresolved. One thing I couldn't escape. My father. The air felt thick with anticipation, like the calm before a storm. I knew what I had to do. I had to face him. I couldn't keep running, couldn't keep avoiding the reality that we needed to talk. My father was sitting in his usual spot by the kitchen window, his back turned to me. He had always been a man of few words, but the silence between us had grown deafening. I could hear the soft clink of his coffee cup on the counter as he set it down, his movements slow and deliberate. He had always been like this, quiet, withdrawn, yet somehow always present, lurking in the background, waiting for his turn to speak. I took a deep breath and walked toward him, my heart pounding in my chest. This wasn't just another conversation. This was the culmination of years of unresolved tension, of silent grudges, of a father and daughter who had never truly understood each other. "Dad?" I said, my voice soft but steady. He turned slowly, his eyes narrowing slightly as he took in the sight of me standing there. I could tell he had been waiting for this moment too, even though neither of us had ever said it aloud. "What is it, Emily?" His voice was quiet, calm, but there was a certain hardness to it. A protective barrier he had put up long ago. "I think it's time we talk," I said, my throat tight with emotion. "About everything." He didn't respond immediately, just looked at me, as though weighing his options. I had always hated how he did that, like he was always holding something back, always keeping a piece of himself just out of reach. But I wasn't going to let him do that anymore. "You've been distant for a long time, Dad," I continued, my voice trembling slightly, but I didn't stop. "You've always been there, but you've never really been present. Not like Mom. And I don't know if I can keep pretending that everything's fine." He didn't say anything at first. Instead, he stood up, slowly, and turned to face me fully. The silence stretched between us, heavy and unyielding, until he finally spoke. "You think I don't care?" His voice was low, but there was a sharpness to it now, a defensiveness I hadn't expected. "You think I've just been sitting here, doing nothing, while everything around me falls apart?" I shook my head, the sting of his words cutting deeper than I cared to admit. "I don't think you don't care, Dad. I think you've been hiding from everything. From me. From us. You've been so focused on keeping things together, on keeping up appearances, that you've never really seen me. Or Sarah. Or anyone." His eyes flickered with something I couldn't quite read, but I saw the shift, the way he looked at me, as if seeing me for the first time in years. There was a vulnerability there, a crack in the armor he had built around himself, and for a moment, I thought maybe this was it. Maybe this was the breakthrough we needed. "I don't know how to be a father to you, Emily," he said quietly, his voice thick with emotion. "I never have. I never learned how. I thought if I worked hard enough, if I provided for you, that would be enough. But I know now that it wasn't. I know that I wasn't enough." The admission hit me like a punch to the gut. I had spent so many years resenting him for not being there, for not being the father I needed, but in that moment, I realized he had been doing the only thing he knew how to do. He had been trying, in his own way, to take care of us, but it had never been enough. And that wasn't his fault. It was the way he had been raised, the way he had been taught to show love. The love he had given us had always been quiet, hidden in actions, but never in words. "Dad," I said softly, my voice breaking. "You didn't have to be perfect. You just had to be here. You just had to show up." For a moment, neither of us spoke. The silence that followed felt different, softer, as though the weight of the years of misunderstanding was beginning to lift. I had always thought that if I confronted him, if I got him to admit his shortcomings, it would somehow make everything better. But I had been wrong. What we needed wasn't an apology or an admission, it was understanding. "I'm sorry," he said, his voice cracking. "I never knew how to be the father you needed me to be." I shook my head, fighting back the tears that threatened to spill over. "I don't need you to be anyone other than who you are, Dad. I just need you to be here, to be present. That's all." He looked at me, his expression softening, and I saw the weight of the years in his eyes. The regret. The missed opportunities. He reached out slowly, and for the first time in my life, I let him pull me into his arms. It wasn't the perfect father-daughter moment I had dreamed of for years. But it was enough. The tears came then, unexpected and overwhelming. All the years of frustration, of disappointment, of feeling abandoned by him, all poured out in that moment. And as he held me, I realized something important. We couldn't change the past, but we could change how we moved forward. We didn't have to have all the answers, but we had to start somewhere. "I'll do better," he whispered, his voice hoarse. "I promise." I nodded, not knowing what the future held, but knowing that for the first time in a long time, we had taken a step toward healing. It wasn't going to be easy, and we wouldn't get everything right, but we were finally speaking the same language. We were finally ready to face the truth together. And maybe that was enough. The days that followed were quieter than I expected. There were no dramatic revelations or instant fixes, no miraculous transformations. But in the stillness, something had changed. The tension that had once suffocated this house had begun to lift, little by little, like the clouds after a storm. We were all learning to breathe again. My relationship with my father had started to take on a new form, awkward, yes, but real. The walls that had separated us for so long hadn't come down entirely, but they were beginning to crack. We started to share more in small, cautious ways. I would sit with him in the evenings, just the two of us, watching TV or talking about mundane things that felt strangely significant, considering how long it had been since we had shared any quiet time together. It wasn't easy. Old habits die hard, and there were moments where the past seemed to crawl back into the conversation, lurking in the corners, reminding us of everything we hadn't said. But we kept moving forward, slowly. Sarah, too, seemed to be finding her way. She had always been the one who needed the most support, and I could see now that her anger had been a shield, protecting her from the deeper pain she couldn't bear to face. But in the weeks that followed, she started opening up to me, even if only a little. It wasn't perfect, but it was progress. And then, one morning, as I sat at the kitchen table, I received a message that made my heart skip a beat. It was from Mom. I hadn't seen her since that conversation we'd had in the kitchen a few weeks ago. I hadn't heard from her much, either. I had thought we were in a better place, but the truth was, I wasn't sure how to move forward with her either. She had apologized, and I had accepted it, but the words felt incomplete. It was as if we were both waiting for something, some kind of breakthrough, some kind of gesture that would finally make everything okay again. The message read, "I'm sorry, Emily. I've been thinking a lot, and I realize that I've been avoiding you. I've been afraid that if we face what's between us, it will just tear everything apart again. But I can't avoid you forever. I need to see you. I need to talk." I sat there, staring at the screen, my heart pounding in my chest. I didn't know if I was ready for this. I wasn't sure I would ever be ready. The last time we spoke, it had been raw and emotional, and even though there was an apology, I still felt a distance between us. But at the same time, I knew that if I didn't face this, I would never be able to move forward. I closed my eyes and took a deep breath, trying to steady the rush of emotions that hit me. The weight of it all, the years of hurt, the love, the longing, the confusion, it all seemed to swirl together in that moment. "I'll see you," I replied. "When and where?" The reply came quickly, "Tomorrow." At the park. 3 p.m. I'll wait for you. The next day, I found myself walking through the park, my steps slow and heavy. The sky was a clear blue, and the air was cool and crisp, but I felt nothing of the beauty around me. I was too consumed by the anticipation of what was to come. I arrived at the park early, not sure what to expect. Would Mom have all the answers? Would she even understand what I needed from her? Or would this be another one of those painful conversations that didn't lead anywhere? When I saw her sitting on the bench, looking small and fragile in the afternoon sun, I couldn't help but feel a surge of both love and sadness. She looked so much like the mother I remembered, yet at the same time, she felt like a stranger. The distance between us was vast, and though I wanted to bridge it, I wasn't sure how. She looked up as I approached, her eyes softening when she saw me. She didn't say anything at first, just patted the bench next to her, a silent invitation. I sat down, our shoulders barely touching, the space between us thick with everything unsaid. "Emily," she began, her voice faltering. "I know things have been hard. For both of us. And I know I've made mistakes. I've hurt you, and for that, I am so sorry. I've spent so much of my life trying to protect you, trying to fix things, but in doing so, I only pushed you away." I nodded, the weight of her words hitting me harder than I expected. There was something in her voice, a genuine vulnerability, that made my chest tighten. "It wasn't just about fixing things, Mom," I said, my voice soft but firm. "It was about being there. Just being there." She looked down at her hands, her fingers twisting nervously. "I didn't know how to be there for you, Emily. Not in the way you needed. I've always been afraid that if I let myself be too vulnerable, if I showed how much I was struggling, everything would fall apart. So I kept it all inside, hoping you wouldn't notice." I took a deep breath, feeling the tears threaten to fall. But this time, they didn't come in a rush. This time, they came slowly, like a gentle stream that had been dammed for far too long. "I noticed, Mom," I said quietly. "I noticed, and it hurt. But I get it now. I do." We sat in silence for a long time, the weight of the past finally beginning to lift. It wasn't gone. There was no magic moment where everything was suddenly fixed. But in that quiet park, under the setting sun, we had finally started to heal. "I don't expect everything to change overnight," I said, my voice steady. "But I'm willing to try. I'm willing to build something new with you." Mom's eyes filled with tears, and she nodded. "I don't know how to fix everything, but I'll try. I'll be here, whenever you need me." For the first time in a long time, I believed her. As we stood up to leave, I felt a small but significant shift inside me. I wasn't healed yet, and I didn't know what the future held. But I knew one thing for sure: healing wasn't about having all the answers or fixing the past. It was about showing up, being vulnerable, and giving each other the space to grow. And in that moment, I realized that was enough. The road ahead would still be filled with challenges, but now, for the first time in years, I felt like I had the strength to face it. Together, with my family, and with myself. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough?